Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall. Today, I'm joined by Brad Myers, a longtime high school sports reporter for the News Journal in Delaware, where he got to cover the Delaware Michael Jordan. That's right, Donte DiVincenzo, how the newest Knick became a star.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, because that would make you an everydayer. And if you want to be an everydayer on the video side, just remember to like and subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you never, ever miss an episode. And be sure to do the same on the audio side. You can also now text Alex and I. That's right. All you have to do is check out our Subtext, which you can do by clicking the link in the episode description just for $5 a month. You get to text Alex and I whenever you want, and you get access to exclusive content. Our first thoughts on any breaking news, our first thoughts post games. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are really, really excited to be getting into that. But without further ado, we are talking Donte DiVincenzo. Even going back to his time at Villanova, I was always intrigued by that Delaware Michael Jordan nickname. I was like, what made this dude such a legend in high school? Well, I found out, and now you're about to also. All right, guys, as promised, I'm joined by Brad Myers, a reporter for the News Journal in Delaware. You can also find their work at Delaware Online. Brad, thank you so much for joining me. We're talking Delaware hoops. We can only be talking about one guy, or at least in regards to the New York Knicks, and that is, of course, Donte DiVincenzo. I want to start from the beginning with you. What was the first time you remember ever hearing this kid's name?
Well, Gavin, thanks for having me on. He's the Michael Jordan of Delaware. That's what the Villanova coach Jay Wright calls him, and that's a very apt description. I think he's our most kind of Delaware's a very small state, and he's our most famous, I guess, basketball. Our best basketball player ever from Delaware is Elena Delle Donne, WNBA MVP. And she actually, her and Donte trained together, or at least have in the past, with the same coach here as a local trainer who's very good. His name is John Noonan. But the first time that I saw Donte DiVincenzo was as a high school freshman at Salesianum, which is an all-boys private Catholic school in Wilmington, which is our biggest city. And he was not the best player on the team at the time. I think I saw him in like his first or second high school game, but he was about 6'2", 6'3". He wasn't 7 feet. He wasn't dunking everything. So you couldn't just instantly say, oh, there's an NBA player. But you could, the first time I saw him, you could tell it's like, this kid is different. He's different than the other kids that we're seeing out here. He has athleticism the others don't have. He was so fast, and he could jump so quickly. He could get off the floor so quickly, and it seemed like he could hang in the air. They would all jump at the same time, and then half second later, he would still be up there. It was just that kind of his athleticism was just off the charts. And you could see that if he continued to work at it, and his size was good enough, you could just see that he had an incredible future.
What was the team like his first year? And was there kind of a singular moment that put him on the map? I mean, I guess initially for Delaware, and then maybe early in his career, even as like kind of like a big time, like, all right, this is going to be one of the top 125 or so recruits in the country.
Well, really his junior year is when they really put it all together. Like I said, Salesianum is a private all-boys school, and it is by far the most dominant athletically high school in Delaware. We're a small state. We have about 1 million people in our population. We have about 55 high schools, I think. So there's not a lot out there, but Salesianum had won, I think, over 150 state championships in all of the boys' sports throughout the school's history. But the one thing that they had never won was in a boys' basketball state championship. They had a lot of good teams. They had gotten to state finals. They had lost championship games in overtime in heartbreaking ways. It was the one thing that they had never been able to do. And then in Dante's junior season, so had a player, a 6'7" center named Brian O'Neill, who was 6'7", 200 pounds at the time, but he went on to become 6'7", 300 pounds. He went on to play football at Pittsburgh, and then became a second-round draft pick of the Minnesota Vikings, and is now a right tackle. I think he has a $90 million contract. He's a Pro Bowl player. So he's a great NFL football player. But at the time, in Dante's junior year, Brian O'Neill was a senior, and he was the center on that team, and he was kind of their team leader. He wound up being the boys' basketball player of the year for Delaware high schools. And they got to the state championship game at the Carpenter Center at the University of Delaware, which is our big arena. It holds about 5,000 people. It was absolutely packed, sold out. The game went back and forth, and Salesianum won at the end. And it was so emotional because they have a ton of alumni. Salesianum is kind of like a college, is more of a college than a high school. They have a lot of alumni that are around. It's kind of like Delaware's version of Notre Dame. And there were old men in the stands after the game, hugging each other and crying, 1963 Salesianum graduates. So when they won that championship, that was a really, really big deal in the community for Salesianum and all of their alums. And obviously, Dante played a great game, played a great role, but Brian O'Neill was the leader of that team. And then the second championship, when Dante's senior year, that was even more dramatic because
I wanted to ask you about that, because I can just imagine the pressure on him. And I think I was reading some of your pieces on him, and you kind of alluded to that, because I know at points that year, they kind of struggled a little bit, got off to a little bit of tough start. We're playing tough competition. Like what was kind of that acclimation process for him, going from being like one of the guys to the guy, not just on his team, but in the state?
Yeah. Well, his senior year, I think he had a lot of pressure. There was some speculation that he was going to transfer away from Salesianum and go to like a Philadelphia Catholic League school, which some very good Delaware high school basketball players had done in the past. There's a lot of great schools up in the Philadelphia area, and they said, well, he needs more exposure. And I said, he's already signed with Villanova. He's got all the exposure that he need. I mean, he's signed his college scholarship. So he's at Salesianum, and since he was such a great player and was already, on the national radar as a Villanova recruit, they had lost most of the team from the year before, and I think they just had one returning starter along with Dante and a bunch of young guys, and they early in the season, because Dante was on the team, that got them into some big games against some big regional and national teams, and they weren't ready for that, and they lost those games. And then they just struggled throughout the entire regular season. And I always thought that they had this great player, but they didn't have very much around him. If they had just given him the ball and just said, go do your thing, he could have averaged 40 points a game, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted to, get roles established in the team. And obviously he's going to be the leader. He's going to be the go-to guy, but they wanted, to get other guys to score and to contribute more. And it didn't go well, and I know they had some tough times in the locker room too. Some harsh feelings, I think, from what we understand from time to time. So they went 10-10. In Delaware, you only play 20 regular season games, and they went 10-10 during the regular season. That's not very good,
Yeah, just to clarify, were the harsh feelings directed towards Dante, or was it Dante frustrated with his teammates, or was it just kind of a general frustration, like we're not as good as we were expected to be? All right, guys, we'll be back with Brad in just a sec to continue talking about Dante's legendary high school career, his national championship game for the ages at Villanova, and why he's going to make an incredible impact on the New York Knicks. But first, It's officially summer, and a new season means new clothes. But your closet shouldn't be the only thing growing when you make those purchases. Now you can also watch your cash back grow with each purchase with Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you could use that cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, the game you're dying to go to, that Knicks game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED.
I think it was just frustration on everybody's part. Obviously the expectations were high. They have this great player, and I mean, people were telling me they've got the best player in the state and they're 10-10. They lost to big regional teams, but they lost to some local teams too, and you just, with that guy. But then I would tell everybody during the regular season, when we get to the state tournament, that Coach Haley, he's going to turn Donte loose. I said that when you get to the single elimination where if you lose, your season's over, I said, I think he's going to turn him loose and he's going to start scoring a lot of points. They're going to really rely on him. And I think they're going to be hard to beat because he is the best player in the state. And that's exactly what happened. They played 4 rounds in the state tournament. We only have one class here. There's no big schools or small schools or anything like that. It's all one thing. And they won a close game against St. George's in the first round of the state tournament. St. George's, just a couple of years ago, also has an NBA player, Nishan Bones Highland.
Oh yeah, we're
with the Denver Nuggets. He went to Virginia Commonwealth, and now he's been traded with the Clippers. He's a 3-point shooter. He's instant offense. He was fun to watch in high school too, but I believe he might have been like a freshman, or I'm not sure if they overlapped. Maybe not. He came along later, but Salesianum won that first game, and then they had a great game against Appoquinimink in the quarterfinals. And New York area fans may remember Miles Cale, who went to Seton Hall, had a very good career at Seton Hall. He was the big star for Appoquinimink, and I think he scored like 31 points in this game, but Donte scored 34. And they won. I think he hit 7 3-pointers in that game. He was just phenomenal. He was just absolutely lights out. And then they got to the semifinals and they played Mount Pleasant, which is a team that had beaten them by about 15 points during the regular season and had a very, very good team. And Donte just turned it on, had another huge game, and they won that. Then they got to the championship game and trying to go for after forever not winning. They're trying to get 2 in a row. It's another sellout crowd. And they played Polytech, which had only lost 1 game the whole year. And they had 2 6'8" players who went on to play in college, 2 good players. And that's a lot of size in Delaware high school basketball. And I just remember the big thing that sticks out in that game was they kind of lobbed the ball down to him on the baseline in the second half. It was a close game, and both of these 6'8" players from Polytech went right at him with their hands up, and he's on the baseline, and he just faded away, falling out of bounds, swished his jumper, and I just said, how do you guard that? You can't. I mean, here's 2 6'8" guys with their hands up, and he's like a foot over both of their hands, and just, if he makes that shot, it's like that's there's nothing you can do. So he was just spectacular in that game, and he really, in those 4 state tournament games, he really became the leader, and they just, it took them the entire season, but when they got to the postseason, they just kind of found what they needed to find, and they kind of let their great player lead the way, and they won another state championship and sent him off to Villanova in the right way.
I was going to ask, what was he like from a personality perspective in high school? Because it seems like there's almost, and you know better than I would, but almost two sides to the guy, which is maybe true of a lot of guys that come through the Villanova program, but like very humble, very team first. But I remember when I was first like kind of watching him and becoming a fan of him during like Villanova's second title run, when he obviously we'll talk about in a bit, but that incredible Michigan game, the defining characteristic there, I would say, and what I think people fell in love with was like here's like this like ginger white kid from Villanova, and there's like a real swagger there, like a confidence, and like the shot you described over the 2'6'8" guys. I mean, to me, that sounds like a microcosm of that. Was that something like even early in his high school career you could tell like, all right, that's just kind of him, and maybe it just came from being dominant at all ages? And like, what was just kind of the balance between someone who's like humble, like maybe a little bit soft-spoken at points, but also like has a real inherent confidence in himself?
Gavin, my sense of him, he was always, to me, he was a quiet, low-key guy. He had this spectacular athletic ability, but he was never like flamboyant, like look at me, like celebrating with his hands up in the air after a big dunk or a huge play or anything like that. He was very polite, well-spoken. I think it was his senior year. I was at like a game, like the first games of the year at a gym, and he had just come to watch with some of his teammates, and he's like the big man on campus, at Salesianum, and he broke away from them, came over and sat next to me and just stretched out in the bleachers. And he was just asking me about some of the teams and some of the players and some of the people I liked. And, here I'm the old high school sports reporter, not a cool guy. And here's the cool guy from high school. He just trying to soak up some knowledge. They get my thoughts on some things. And so he was always just interested, but he was so polite and just a low key, humble guy. He could have been really, I don't know what he could have been really, it's all about me, but he was never like that. I actually haven't talked to Donte since he left high school. I mean, we have other guys that do college and pro sports, so I haven't talked to him, but he is still just revered in Delaware. People still talk about him and the great plays that they saw him make. I mean, the greatest high school play that I saw Donte is as great as that shot over the 2'6'8" guys was. They were playing St. Mark's, which is their Catholic school crosstown rival. And it was at St. Mark's, and one of the St. Mark's guards made a steal out at the top of the key. And he's going to go out, just go cruise down for the layup, easy 2 points. Donte was back under the basket. I think he was posting up. So he's like 25 feet behind this guy when it happens. And you're not even paying attention to Donte. He's so far behind the play, and you're just like, all right, this kid's going to go in and lay it up. And Donte just went streaking down the court, came out of nowhere and blocked this shot, like right at he just looked like a streak. And everybody, I mean, the kid who shot the layup was just stunned, like, where did that come from? How did that happen? And the crowd just went crazy because, I mean, everybody there was just like, I've never seen anything like this before. And he could do that. And I see him still in the NBA every once in a while. When they played Michigan Villanova played Michigan in the championship game, and he was so phenomenal. But to me, the biggest thing he did in that game is a Michigan player went up for a two-handed dunk, and Donte went up and blocked it with both hands, took the ball away from – I've never seen anybody – you've seen a lot of block dunks, a lot of block shots. He went up with two hands and took it away from him. So that's just the kind of just off-the-charts athleticism that he can display sometimes. Even at the NBA level, he can just every once in a while make play that just makes you just say, wow, and to have seen him play in a small state at high school, it still just brings back a lot of great memories. And he was a really, really nice young man.
And we had Mike Jensen on earlier this week, who's a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he was kind of talking about how Villanova, like going into the era that was defined by now the three Knicks, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Dante, of course, Mikal Bridges, Chris Jenkins in there as well. They kind of got back to their roots as a program where they had access to the 5-star guys, the consensus top 25 guys, and they had kind of built teams around them, and those teams sort of fell apart, and they were a little bit too young and a little bit too inexperienced, and then guys would leave for the NBA early, and Jay Wright sort of reassessed, and it felt like he was like, all right, I gotta go back to getting slightly lower ranked, not even necessarily lower ranked, but guys who were, I guess, defined by their toughness, by their personality, and we're going to stay at Villanova and develop and kind of emerge down the road as all-American type guys. Josh Hart was certainly that guy. Chris Jenkins was certainly that guy. And then Dante was certainly that guy. What was the process like? And I guess as long as you were following it, did you think it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to go to Villanova, or was there a point where he was really strongly considering another school?
Obviously I followed his recruiting. I don't think there was much of a recruiting process at all. I don't really remember him. I mean, I know other schools knew about him. I mean, there's no doubt that, he sticks out. I'm sure Villanova was not the only school recruiting him, but he seemed to be locked in on Villanova very early in the process. And I don't really remember other schools really being in the mix with him. It was just always just Villanova. And it seemed back at the time, it seemed like a really good fit, Jay Wright, and it turned out to be, that was a great place. I mean, like I said, with his athleticism, he would have been a good player at any college, but I think he really thrived at Villanova. He had some problems with injuries his first year, and wasn't able to play the whole year. But then his second year, he just really took off, and his third year, he was just phenomenal. And of course, at his absolute best in the championship game, And one of the other cool things I think about Donte DiVincenzo is he's only 26 years old. He won 2 state championships in high school basketball. He's got 2 NCAA championships at Villanova, and his first NBA team. He's got a championship ring with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Not a bad resume.
So, that's a winning pedigree. I mean, he's been on a lot of championship teams already.
You know what? If he brings one to New York, I'll argue to the death that'll be the biggest one. How did you? I mean, just watching as a fan, how did he improve in his time at Villanova? Was obviously, to your point, freshman year it was just the injury, but I think looking back on that run, and this is something that Wildcats fans remember, but Knicks fans maybe don't know. Like, to your point, that sophomore year, he started having these really big games, and it kind of peaked, even though that NCAA tournament run in the 16-17 season was ultimately disappointing for Villanova, and they lost in the second round. The silver lining of it was Dante put up 18 points per game in those 2 tournament games, and you could kind of see the seeds being planted for what was ultimately that breakout season, and then a year later, that breakout national championship game against Michigan. But just from a skill perspective, like, how did you see him get better at the college level?
Well, in high school, he was a streaky shooter. He could, like I said, in that quarterfinal game in his senior year, he had 7 3-point shots, and a lot of those for like 5-10 feet behind the arc. He was phenomenal in that game, but he wasn't phenomenal every night shooting the ball like that. So, and also he could sometimes struggle hitting free throws in high school. So you just thought, when he gets to college, gets some great college coaching from Jay Wright and the staff there at Villanova, that more time in the gym, playing with and against better players. You just thought, he's going to need to shoot better, as he continues to go up higher levels of basketball, college and pro. And certainly he got to, he had his career high 3-point percentage shooting. So I think he's continually gotten better as a shooter, which is very important, for somebody his size, even with all of his athletic gifts and everything. When you're 6'4" in the NBA, you've got to be able to shoot, if you're going to last. So he's become a good shooter. And, I think he's just fit in really well on every team I think that he's played in, and he's played in different roles. His junior in high school, he had Brian O'Neill as the leader of that team, and he was kind of the Batman and Robin thing, and then obviously he took over as the leader of his high school team in his senior year. And then, college is a different thing, and he figured out a way to fit in there, and then, kind of seemed to emerge as a leader there at the end of his college career. And then, you go in the NBA and you're with the Milwaukee Bucks. And, I think probably at that point, your job is to throw lob passes to Giannis, so it's a little bit different. And so, but, he fit into that well. He got traded to Sacramento, which, a lot of people think that's you're just going to disappear there. I think he fit in well there, and then I thought Golden State was just a great situation for him this year. I thought that was going to be the ultimate for him because, you're not going to, if you're not Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, you're not going to get guarded very much there. And I thought the way he could run and jump, his athleticism, that he would really thrive in that offense. And I think he did. And I thought that was really a great situation for him. But I think the Knicks are a good situation for him too, because I think his game is adaptable. He's not going to be the best player on the Knicks, but nobody's expects him to be. That's not going to be his role. But I think he just fits in well everywhere he is. And I think that's his skill set. And I think part of it is his personality. I think he can. So, he's become a solid NBA player. He's still and will forever be the Michael Jordan of Delaware. And so everybody in Delaware is proud of him. And, he's having a great NBA career. He's got a big contract here, I think 4 years, $50 million. That's, really great financially for him. And so I think he's really maximized his physical gifts and made himself into a very good basketball player. And I think Knicks fans are going to enjoy watching him.
Yeah, I want to echo just everything you said. But just as a fan of him, I was excited when he went to Golden State, and I thought it would be the closest approximation to what he had at Villanova, where like the level of shooting for the college game was just revolutionary. Like they were playing 5-out basketball, but they had the athleticism to survive it on defense. And when he went off in that game, it felt like a product of Villanova. I mean, that whole tournament was them just breaking other teams with their shooting, with everything that Jalen Brunson could do. And then when DiVincenzo got hot, it was almost like one variable too many. And I know, I think it was John Beilein coming out of that game said like, hey, like we didn't play that well tonight. We could have played great. It wouldn't have mattered. Like Villanova would have beat us anyways. And he was kind of the cherry on top of that performance. And in Golden State, you saw a lot of the same stuff where he had the ability to cut off of Steph, to cut off of Draymond, shot over 40% from three and had 3 or 4 feet of space on most of those shots. And that's kind of the big question I have with him coming to New York is, can he shoot 37%, 38% with a bit less space, but having that chemistry with the Josh Hart, with the Jalen Brunson, and playing with like in the second unit, like a great creator in his own right, and Emmanuel Quickly. I'm pretty confident in what he could do. I just wanted to finish on this. Like after that Michigan game, what was the vibe like in Delaware? Like was he just like could you go to a grocery store and like avoid hearing the name Donte DiVincenzo at that point? And like where do you think when it's all said and done, like he'll go down in like the annals of like maybe like great Delaware athletes and just sort of most famous people to ever come out of the state?
Oh yeah, he's right up there. Like I said, he's the Michael Jordan of Delaware, and still a lot of people talk about him. And if we have a pretty good high school basketball player now, they'll start to he's pretty good, but he's not Donte. Everybody here, they just call him Donte. He's on a first name basis in Delaware, and he's very well known, and he's like I said, he never had any kind of controversy or anything here. So So I think a lot of people in Delaware keep up with him and they're proud of him. And I think he's going to be a good fit with the Knicks because I think he would be a good fit with just any NBA team because his game is adaptable. I think, just like you said, I don't think his offense is going to come as easily as it did with Golden State. But I just think that he'll find a way and he'll fit in. And I think he'll be, just a good player for them. And I mean, I think he could play a solid role at this point in his career on any NBA team. I don't know if he could be, a number one scorer on some team. I think if he was going to be your number one option at the NBA level, I don't know if he could handle that. But the Knicks have a lot of good players, and I think he's just going to be one of those guys that's like, there's another guy you got to worry about, and he will have he'll have some great games with the Knicks. I mean, I think he'll have some games where he pops up and he has 25, 28 points, so I think he's a good fit with them. But yeah, we love him here in Delaware, and he's certainly one of the most legendary athletes. We have had some good athletes here. We've got about 6 or 8 players in the NFL from Delaware right now. We've got some guys with some Super Bowl rings from Delaware, so we've had some really good athletes. But Donte absolutely ranks right up there with anybody.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited to watch him, and I think that was outside the fact that he's not 6'7", 6'8". Like, I think everyone agreed he was perfect for the Knicks from a cultural perspective, from a skill level, and the chemistry he obviously has with the Nova guys. But Brad, thank you so much for taking us into what he was like in high school. It would be cool to ask him about it someday, just like what that whole experience was like being like the guy in an entire state. It's pretty cool. But before I let you go, can you just tell everyone one final time where they can find all your great work covering high school sports in Delaware?
Yeah, I cover high school sports here in Delaware. Brad Myers TNJ on Twitter. The News Journal is our newspaper. DelawareOnline.com is where you can find all of our high school things. If you go back into the archives, I have written a lot of things about Donte if you're interested in that. So I just really appreciate you having me on, Gavin, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, thanks. You too, Brad. And I can advocate for everyone to go back and read those articles because I fell into a rabbit hole, and I really enjoyed finding out, I mean, just how big he was in high school. But until next time, this was Locked On Knicks, and we'll talk to you soon.